We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome to Conspiracy Corner Podcast, everyone. This is Abe, your host. Just got off work at 7:16 a.m. It is February 26, 2021. Just been chilling out, working a bunch, 6 days a week again. Had a little car trouble earlier this week. We bought a used transmission for the Cadillac because that's all we could afford at the time, and something inside of it shattered, so we had to fix that particular piece. Basically, it was like $2,500. So I feel like anytime I get ahead, I don't even really get excited about it. It makes me worry when I start getting ahead financially, because it's like, oh, something's gonna happen. Something's around the corner, you know. I get a lot of people say that's like an Irish mindset, you know. That's a very Irish trait, that we don't like to have too much money because when we do, we know something's around the corner. But yeah, I'll go ahead and let you guys know what this episode's about if you can't figure it out from the title. Basically, this is attorney Bugliosi, however you pronounce it. From what he gathered, it is Charles Manson's theory or belief system for his cult, the Manson family. It ties in with the Beatles, and this is kind of how it ties in with the Beatles. The Beatles, man, we could do a whole episode on the Beatles as far as like Paul, aka Paul McCartney. There's so much conspiracy stuff tied in with the Beatles. We could do a whole episode just on the Beatles. But this episode in particular is just going to be focusing on the Manson apocalyptic idea and belief system and how it ties in with the Beatles. Now, I do know that we've talked about it last episode, that Manson is connected with the CIA and MK Ultra and LSD experiments. So he says that Bugliosi's book is completely BS. And Bugliosi, man, he's a very sketchy individual. He got in trouble for stalking a woman, and he's just a shady dude, which he's a lawyer, so that's to be expected. But I don't really know who to trust. Use your discernment, because on one hand you have Bugliosi saying Manson's a vile, evil POS, which Manson is evil. And then you have a quote-unquote serial killer, or mass murderer, whatever you want to call him. He didn't really actually murder anyone that we could prove. But you have him saying that Bugliosi is a fraud, a fake, and a liar. So you got two sketchy individuals calling each other liars. So it's really hard to figure out, honestly. The only way that I would suggest to you is to look at all sources as much as you can with this case and use your discernment, man. Take out stuff that you think is fishy, you know. Use your discernment. But we'll get into the Beatles and Helter Skelter and how it ties in together. It was Paul Watkins who finally supplied the missing link in Manson's motive for the murders. Yet if I hadn't talked to Jacobson and Poston, I might have missed its importance. For it was from all three, Greg, Brooks, and Paul, that I obtained the keys to understanding. 1. Charles Manson's unique interpretation of the Book of Revelation, and 2. His decidedly curious and complex attitude toward the English musical group The Beatles. Several persons had told me Manson was fond of quoting from the Bible, particularly the 9th chapter of Revelation. Once Charlie had handed Jacobson a Bible already opened to the chapter, and while he read it, supplied his own interpretation of the verses. With only one exception, which will be noted, what Greg told me tallied with what I later heard from Poston and Watkins. The quote-unquote four angels were the Beatles, whom Manson considered leaders, spokesmen, and prophets. According to Greg, the line, "And he opened the bottomless pit, and there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power," was still another reference to the English group. Greg said, "Locusts, Beatles, one and the same. Their faces were as the faces of men, yet they had hair, the hair of women," an obvious reference to the long-haired musicians. Out of the mouths of the four angels issued fire and brimstone. Greg said, this referred to spoken words, the lyrics of the Beatles' songs, and the power that came out of their mouths. Their breastplates of fire, Poston added, were their electric guitars. Their shapes, like unto horses prepared unto battle, were the dune buggies. By the way, the dune buggies were, what they're talking about, the dune buggies right there is, Manson was turning Volkswagens into dune buggies to go into the desert, into the bottomless pit, while the apocalypse was going on, essentially. The horsemen who numbered 200,000 and who would roam the earth spreading destruction were the motorcyclists, the biker gangs. Because this is during, the biker gang era, Hell's Angels and all that. It was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. I wondered about that seal on their forehead. By the way, I do plan on doing some podcast episodes on the Book of Revelation. I don't know, I thought it would be a kind of a cool little mini-series. Let me know in the comments if you would find that interesting. How did Manson interpret that? I asked Jacobson. It was all subjective, Greg replied. He said there would be a mark on people. Charlie had never told him exactly what the mark would be, only that he, Charlie, would be able to tell. He would know. And that the mark would designate whether they were with him or against him. With Charlie, it was either one or the other, Greg said. There was no middle road. One verse spoke of worshiping demons and idols of gold and silver and bronze. Manson said that referred to material worship, of the establishment, of automobiles, houses, money. Directing your attention to verse 15, which reads, this is a question for him, and the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men. Did he say what that meant? Answer. He said those were the people who would die in Helter Skelter. 1/3 of mankind, the white race. I know. I knew. I now knew I was right on track. Only on one point did Jacobson's recollection of Manson's interpretation differ from that of the others. The first verse of Revelation 9, which kind of reminds me of the track Revolution 9. I wonder if they're going to tie that together. I've read this book like 3 or 4 times, and I believe they tie it together. Yeah, for a little bit I was obsessed with Charles Manson in high school. I'm not going to lie. Only one point of Jacobson's recollection of Manson's interpretation differ from that of others. The first verse of Revelation 9 refers to a 5th angel. The chapter ends, however, referring to only 4. Originally, there were 5 Beatles, Greg explained, one of whom, Stuart Sutcliffe, had died in Germany in 1962. Potson and Watkins. See, I never actually remembered that there being 5 Beatles, you know. I wonder if it's a Mandela effect. Poston and Watkins, who unlike Jacobson, were members of the family, interpreted this much differently. Verse I reads, "And the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven onto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit." To members of the family, the identity of that 5th angel, the ruler of the bottomless pit, was never in doubt. It was Charlie. Verse 2 reads, "And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, which in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon." Apollyon would be, I would think probably Apollo. I have a book of angels, fallen and non-fallen. And actually a lot of them tie in with the lowercase g's of like Greek mythology and multiple other mythologies. So maybe we'll do an episode on Abaddon and Apollyon and delve into that. The king also had a Latin name, which though it appears in the Catholic Douay version, was inadvertently omitted by the translators of the King James Version. It was exterminians. Exterminians, to Charles Manson. As far as Jacobson, Watkins, and Poston knew, Manson placed no special meaning on the last verse of Revelation 9. But I found myself thinking of it often in the months ahead. Neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. The important thing to remember about Revelation 9, Greg told me, is that Charlie believed this is happening now, not in the future. It's going to begin now, and it's time to choose sides. Either that or flee with him to the desert. According to Jacobson, Manson believed the Beatles were spokesmen. They were speaking to Charlie through their songs, letting him know from across the ocean that this is what was going to go down. He believed this firmly. He considered their songs prophecy, especially the songs in the so-called White Album. He told me that many, many times. Watkins and Potson also said that Manson and the family were convinced that the Beatles were speaking to Charlie through their music. For example, in the song "I Will" are the lines, "And when at last I find you, your song will fill the air. Sing it loud so I can hear you. Make it easy to be near you." Charlie interpreted this to mean that the Beatles wanted him to make an album. Potson and Watkins also said Charlie told them that the Beatles were looking for JC, and he was the JC they were looking for. He also told them that the Beatles knew that Christ had returned to earth again, and that he was living somewhere in Los Angeles. How in the world did he come up with that? I asked them. And this is Bugliosi, by the way. In the White Album is a song called Honey Pie, a lyric of which reads, "Oh, honey pie, my position is tragic. Come and show me the magic of your Hollywood song." I ain't gonna lie, I wish, I feel like I want to like sing each lyric, but I actually was not really a big fan of the Beatles, man. I always liked Revolution 9, I liked Helter Skelter, um, the birthday song. Today it's your birthday. You know, um, honestly, that's like the only three songs I can think of off the top of my head. Come Together was pretty good. I like the Aerosmith version better. Um, Even though Steven Tyler was on Jeffrey Epstein's flight list, that kind of sucks because that kind of broke my heart. But yeah, so I ain't gonna lie, I wasn't really a big fan of the Beatles. You can probably hate me and thumbs down the video, unsubscribe, whatever, but I always thought the Beatles were overrated. The Beatles and Bob Dylan. I really can't stand listening to either one. I don't know. I guess I'm more into punk rock. Sorry. Punk rock, metal, something a little heavier. Which I like softer music, like The Cure and shit like that, but I just never liked the Beatles. I always thought the Beatles and Bob Dylan were overrated. I wonder how many people I lose on that one. I'm going to get hate in the comments. Charlie, of course, wanted them to sail across the Atlantic to join him in Death Valley, while he wanted the Beatles to join him in the middle of the desert. While residing in the Gresham Street house in January and February of 1969, just after the White Album was released, Manson and the girls sent several telegrams, wrote a number of letters, and made at least 3 phone calls to England, attempting to reach the Beatles, with no luck. The line, "I'm in love, but I'm lazy," from Honey Pie, meant to Charlie that the Beatles loved JC, but were too lazy to go looking for him. They'd just gone all the way to India, following a man who they'd finally decided was a false prophet, the Maharishi. They were also calling for JC. Charlie in the first 8 lines of the song "Don't Pass Me By" in Your Blues, and in the early Magical Mystery Tour album in Blue Jay Way. Much of this I would never use at the trial. It was simply too absurd. The Beatles' White Album, Manson told Watkins, Poston, and others, set up things for the revolution. His album, which was to follow, would, in Charlie's words, blow the cork off the bottle, man. That would start it. Much of the time at the Gresham Street house, according to Potson, Watkins, and others, was spent composing songs from Charlie's album. Each was to be a message song directed to a particular group of people, such as the bikers, outlining the part they would play in Helter Skelter. Charlie would work hard on these songs. They had to be very subtle, he said, like the Beatles' own songs. Their true meaning hidden beneath the awareness of all but the tuned-in people. Manson was counting on Terry Melcher to produce this album, I think Terry Melcher was a Beach Boy. I'm pretty fucking sure of that, dude. Charlie was trying to be the 5th Beach Boy or the 6th one, whatever. I think Beach Boys were only 4. I used to have one of their CDs back in the day. I do like the Beach Boys, though. I ain't gonna lie. I love the Beach Boys. Manson was counting on Terry Melcher to produce this album. According to numerous family members, both Melcher and Jacobson denied this. Terry had promised to come and listen to the songs one evening. The girls cleaned the house, baked cookies, rolled joints. Melcher didn't show. Manson, according to Potson and Watkins, never forgave Terry for this. Melcher's word was no good, he said angrily on a number of occasions. Though the Beatles had made many records, it was the double disc White Album, which Capitol issued in December 1968, that Manson considered most important. Even the fact that the cover was white, with no other design except the emblazoned name of the group, held significance for him. It was and remains a startling album, containing some of the Beatles' finest music and some of their strangest. Its 30 songs range from tender love ballads to pop parodies to cacophonies of noise made by taking loops of very diverse tapes and splicing them together. To Charles Manson, however, it was prophecy. At least this is what he convinced his followers. That Charlie had renamed Susan Atkins Sadie Mae Glutz long before the White Album appeared containing the name of the song Sexy Sadie was additional proof to the family that Manson and the Beatles were mentally attuned. Almost every song in the album had a hidden meaning which Manson interpreted for his followers. To Charlie, Rocky Raccoon meant coon, or the black man. While I, to everyone except Manson and the family, it was obvious that the lyrics of Happiness is a Warm Gun had sexual connotations. Charlie interpreted the song to mean that the Beatles were telling Blackie to get guns and fight Whitey. According to Potson and Watkins, the family played 5 songs in the White Album more than all the others. They were Blackbird, Piggies, Revolution 1, Revolution 9, and Helter Skelter. Blackbird singing in the dead of night, take these broken wings and learn to fly. I do know that song, Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Sorry. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. Went the lyrics of Blackbird, according to Jacobson. Charlie believed that the moment was now and that the black man was going to arise, overthrow the white man, and take his turn. According to Watkins, in this song, Charlie figured the Beatles were programming the black people to get it up, get it on, and start doing it. On first hearing the song, I thought the La Bianca murders had made a mistake writing rise instead of arise. However, Jacobson told me that Charlie said the black man was going to rise up against the white man. Rise was one of Charlie's big words, Greg said, providing me with the origin of still another of the key words. Both the Tate and La Bianca murders had occurred in the dead of night, quote unquote. However, if the parallel had been special significance to Manson, he never admitted it to anyone I interviewed, nor, if he knew it, did he admit the dictionary meaning of the phrase Helter Skelter. The song Helter Skelter begins, when I get to the bottom, I do know that one. When I get to the bottom, I go back to the top of the slide, where I stop and I turn and I go for a ride. According to Poston, Manson said this was a reference to the family emerging from the bottomless pit. There was a simpler explanation. In England, home of the Beatles, Helter Skelter is another name for a slide in an amusement park. If you listen closely, you can hear the grunts and oinks of pigs in the background of the song Piggies. By piggies, Greg and the others told me, Manson meant anyone who belonged to the establishment. By that he meant the black man was going to give the piggies, the establishment, a damn good whacking, Jacobson explained. Charlie really loved that line, both Watkins and Poston said. He was always quoting it. I couldn't listen to the final stanza without visualizing what had happened at 3301 Waverly Drive. It describes piggy couples dining out in all their starched finery, eating bacon with their forks and knives. Rosemary LaBianca, 41 knife wounds. Lino LaBianca, 12 knife wounds. Punctured with a fork 7 times. a knife in his throat, a fork in his stomach, and on the wall, in his own blood, was scrawled, "Death to Pigs." "There's a chord at the end of the song, Piggies," Watkins said. "It goes down, and it's a really weird chord, after the sound of piggies snorting. And in Revolution 9, there's that same chord, and after it, they have a little pause and a snort, snort, snort. But in the pause, there's machine gun fire." "And it's the same thing with the Helter Skelter song," Paul continued. "There has this really weird chord, and in with Revolution 9 song, there's the same chord again, with machine guns firing and people dying and screaming and stuff." The White Album contains 2 songs with the word revolution in their titles. The printed lyrics of Revolution 1, as given on the jacket insert, said, "You say you want a revolution. Well, you know, we all want to change the world. But when you talk about destruction, don't you know that you can count me out?" When you listen to the record itself, however, immediately after out, you hear the word in. Manson took this to mean the Beatles, once undecided, now favored the revolution. Manson made much of these hidden lyrics, which can be found in a number of Beatles songs, but are especially prevalent in the White Album. They were, he told his followers, direct communications to him, Charlie, aka Jesus Christ, JC. Later on, the lyrics go, "You say you got a real solution. Well, you know, we'd all love to see the plan." The meaning of this was obvious to Manson. Sing out, Charlie, and tell us how we can escape the Holocaust. Of all the Beatles songs, Revolution 9 is easily the weirdest. Reviewers couldn't decide whether it was an exciting new direction for rock or an elaborate put-on. One critic said it reminded him of a bad acid trip. Well, Manson was taking acid while, quote-unquote, translating the album, so, yeah. I think that's why they made it like that, to fuck with people. Especially when they're stoned, you know. There are no lyrics as such, nor is it music in any conventional sense. Rather, it is a montage of noises, whispers, shouts, snatches of dialogue from the BBC, bits of classical music, mortars exploding, babies crying, church hymns, car horns, and football yells, which together with the oft reiterating refrain, "Number 9, number 9, number 9, build to a climax of machine gun fire and screams to be followed by the soft and obviously symbolic lullaby, Good Night." Of all the songs in the White Album, Jacobson said, Charlie spoke mostly of Revolution 9. He said it was the Beatles' way of telling people what was going to happen. It was their way of making prophecy. It directly paralleled the Bible's Revelation 9. So yeah, it was the parallel. It was the Battle of Armageddon, the coming black-white revolution, portrayed in sound, Manson claimed. And after having listened to it myself, I could easily believe that if ever there were such a conflict, this was probably very much what it would sound like. According to Potson, when Charlie would listen to it, he heard in the background noise in and around the machine gun fire the oinking of pigs, a man's voice saying rise. Listening to the recording again, I also heard it, twice repeated, the first time almost to a whisper, and the second a long drawn-out scream. This makes me want to listen to the song and see if I can hear what he's hearing. Maybe do a YouTube video on it. So if you're, by the way, there you go. I wasn't intentionally plugging it, but if you're listening to us audio only, you can check my main channel out on YouTube. It's literally just Abe Williams. The profile picture is a sideways dream catcher. If you're watching on YouTube, if you listen to us on other platforms like BitChute, Rumble, YouTube, you'll get episodes that I can't put out on YouTube. And also, if you listen to us on Anchor or Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Spotify, anything like that, we get paid a penny for each listen. So, like I said, I don't do this for the money. I just do it for fun. But we do get a penny for each listen, which we'll eventually buy as a second or a splicer so we can hook up two microphones and me and my wife can do podcasts together more often. This was potent evidence, though both Jacobson and Potson, I'd now linked Manson irrevocably with the word rise printed in blood at the La Bianca residence. In Revolution 1, the Beatles had finally decided to commit themselves to the revolution. In Revolution 9, they were telling the black man that now was the time to rise and start it all, according to Charlie. Manson found many other messages in the song, including the words, "Block that Nixon," but as far as his philosophy of Helter Skelter was concerned, these were the most important. Charles Manson was already talking about an imminent black-white war when Greg Jacobson first met him. In the spring of 1968, there was an underground expression current at the time. "The shit is coming down," variously interpreted as the meaning the day of judgment was at hand or all hell was breaking loose. And Charlie often used it in reference to the coming racial conflict. But he wasn't rabid about it, Greg said. It was just one of many subjects that they discussed. When I first met Charlie in June 1968, he really didn't have any of this Helter Skelter stuff going on, Paul Watkins told me. He talked a little bit about the shit coming down, but just barely. He said when the shit comes down, the black man will be on one side and the white will be on the other. And that's all he said about it. Then, that December, Capitol issued the Beatles' White Album, one of the songs of which was Helter Skelter. The final stanza went, "Look out, helter skelter, helter skelter, helter skelter, look out." Background scream, "Helter Skelter, she's coming down fast, yes she is, yes she is." Manson apparently first heard the White Album in Los Angeles while on a trip there from Barker Ranch, where most of the family remained. When Manson returned to Death Valley on December 31st, 1968, he told the group, according to Potson, "Are you hep to what the Beatles are saying? Helter Skelter's coming down, man. The Beatles are telling it like it is." It was the same expression, except that in place of the word for defecation, Manson now substituted Helter Skelter. Another link had been made, this time to the bloody words on the refrigerator door at the La Bianca residence. Though this was the first time Manson used the phrase, it was not to be his last. Watkins said, and he started rapping about this Beatle album and Helter Skelter and all the meanings that I didn't get out of it. And he builds this picture up and he called it Helter Skelter. And what it meant was these are his words, and the Negroes were going to come down and rip the cities all apart. After this, Watkins said, we started listening to the Beatles album constantly. Death Valley is very cold in winter, so Manson found a 2-story house at 20910 Gresham Street in Canoga Park in San Fernando Valley, not too far from Spahn Ranch. In January 1969, Watkins said, "We all moved into Gresham Street house to get ready for Helter Skelter, so we could watch it coming down and see all of the things going on in the city." He, Charlie, called the Gresham Street house the Yellow Submarine. from the Beatles movie. It was like a submarine in that when you were in it, you weren't allowed to go out. You could only peek out of the windows. We started designing dune buggies and motorcycles, and we were going to buy 25 Harley Sportsters. And we mapped escape routes to the desert, supply caches. We had all these different things going. I watched him building this picture up, Paul noted. There you have it, guys. That is the Beatles and Charles Manson's Helter Skelter theory and how it all ties together, man. I hope it makes a little more sense of a madman. I don't know, though, as crazy as it sounds, man. When they talk about race war stuff and all this, if you look around with all the whole Black Lives Matter movement and all the craziness going on in general, I don't know. Maybe he was right in a way, or maybe we're all mad here.
We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.